Throughout the last 400 years, African and African American history has been marginalized, misrepresented, or omitted entirely. This historical erasure is now extending to the world of artificial intelligence, where history, particularly African and African American history, is redefined, ignored, or spun to enforce purposeful historical inaccuracies, to align with a European worldview. Historical revisionism carries profound consequences for both Africans and individuals of African descent. Historical revisionism is a form of psychological warfare implemented by those of European descent targeting Africans and people of African descent. Revisionist history deliberately aims to undermine the self-esteem and identity of individuals of African descent. The portrayal of Africans as lacking historical achievements has long perpetuated feelings of inferiority and impeded their sense of pride and cultural identity. This revisionist history movement is once again ramping up, only it is spreading more widely today through AI. However, before delving into the AI issue, it is important to note that European revisionist history against Africans is starting to impact not just Africans and their descendants but Europeans as well. The distortion of African and African American history, intended to instill a false sense of superiority among Europeans, is starting to yield detrimental effects. As the global community increasingly rejects these fabricated narratives, Europeans are finding themselves confronted with a loss of international respect. The promotion of these false historical European narratives erodes trust in European credibility, ultimately hindering the development of constructive international relationships. More and more people are beginning to see and understand that much of what they were taught about European history in school is in fact lies. To maintain world dominance. The erasure of African history is not a new phenomenon. In traditional education, history has often focused on the achievements and perspectives of European people at the expense of Africa. This misrepresentation is particularly evident in the way Europeans have positioned themselves within the narrative of ancient Egypt. Instead of acknowledging the historical truth that Black Africans were the founders of Egypt and predated the arrival of Europeans and Middle Easterners in Africa, the historical record is often, and inaccurately, portrayed as if ancient Egypt were primarily a civilization of Europeans and Middle Easterners. In reality, Europeans and Middle Easterners did not conquer and inhabit Egypt until about 500 years before Christ. Consequently, all the accomplishments attributed to Egypt, including language, writing, agriculture, mummification, medicine, science, geometry, the pyramids, and more, were originally founded and created by Black Africans. This kind of misrepresentation not only deprives Africa of its rightful place in history, but also falsely attributes Africa's achievements to Europe and the Middle East, when in fact these people and their cultures did not exist until thousands of years after Egypt was already in existence. Those pushing the Europeanization of ancient Egypt recognize that if the attribution is properly given to Black Africans, that would mean all that we as humans know was given to them by Africans and not Europeans, thereby dispelling the white supremacy myth. When looking up information about ancient Egypt using AI, the false European and Middle Eastern version of history is displayed, even though scientifically and historically, biblically and geographically this information is incorrect and can be proven as such. The deliberate misrepresentation didn't stop with ancient Egypt. The same took place with the Bible. Once again, Europeans removed Africa from the Bible to place themselves into the biblical narrative, usurping the African identity. The removal of Africa from the Bible most likely took place during the Nicaea Council, which convened in 325 AD. It should go without saying that Adam and Eve had to have been African if you were to take the Bible literally. And if this is true, then Noah and his descendants were African. This includes Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. As a matter of fact, Europeans really did not appear in the Bible until the New Testament as converts to Christianity. Therefore, Africans were the original Hebrews by blood through the line of Isaac, the original Islamic child of Abraham through the line of Ishmael by blood, and the original Jews, Islamics, and Christians by faith. Europeanization of the Bible is another widespread example of revisionist history. Once again, AI is spreading false European narratives. Even though these things can be proven by science, geography, and an accurate historical timeline, These omissions and willful misrepresentations don't just impact Africa in the past. Revisionist history is underway in the United States as we speak. It is taking place in present-day America involving slavery and African American history. Many Republican politicians have taken up the mantra of furthering the false narrative of white supremacy by taking up causes to omit or revise American history by removing slavery and African American history from the educational curricula. Labeling true history involving African Americans as wokeism or divisive. This rewriting of history seeks to perpetuate false American narratives for future generations and to whitewash the historical atrocities committed by European Americans against Africans and their descendants. History is not a narrative. History must be grounded in factual and accurate accounts, and must not be a subject open to personal interpretation but one that relies on objective evidence and historical truth. Now, AI companies have become involved in perpetuating the revision of history, particularly when it comes to African or African diaspora history. AI is intentionally contributing to the whitewashing of history by perpetuating false European narratives that can be readily disproven. The algorithms used by AI systems are often trained on vast datasets that themselves contain historical biases. These biases are leading to skewed historical results. Should Africans and African Americans consider pursuing class action lawsuits against AI companies? It depends on how fast AI companies rectify this problem. AI can disseminate false narratives to millions within seconds, propagating information worldwide to billions faster than ever before in human history. If AI companies persist in misrepresenting African and African diaspora in history, it is imperative for Africans and people of African descent to file a class action lawsuit. Truth is at stake and Africans must be willing to stop the psychological warfare against our people. AI companies have a responsibility to address and rectify these untruths. They must invest in diverse data sources, work with historians, and implement robust checks to ensure their algorithms do not perpetuate false narratives. While not the ideal course of action, legal measures can be a powerful tool for holding companies accountable for the harm caused by biased AI systems. In this context, a class action lawsuit can shed light on the extent of the problem and create incentives for substantial and positive change. While AI serves various valuable functions, it can inadvertently serve as a brainwashing tool of propaganda if historical inaccuracies are allowed to become normalized. The whitewashing and redefining of African and African American history in AI is a serious concern, one that Africans and African diasporans must rectify before it is too late. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, share it, and subscribe for more videos on African and African diaspora geopolitics, politics, history, news, and religion.